Ja,
Ah, okay, das klappt auf jeden Fall. Mhm. Wie sehen Sie denn die Teilnehmenden? Ach so, ja, Diskussionsteilnehmer und dann Teilnehmende ist in dem nächsten Fenster, sehe ich.
ja, genau.
Können wir einmal noch was zu trinken? Dann machen wir vielleicht noch mal kurz das Mikro aus, bis die Leute dann so langsam eintrudeln.
Ja,
Fangen die Veranstaltungen eigentlich sonst um Viertel nach an oder um voll?
ähm, voll. Also einfach so, wie es quasi im Programm steht.
Okay,
Also, genau.
klar. Gut, dann bis gleich.
Ja.
Hi Micha.
Hi.
Äh, Wir sind in einem Webinar-Format, deswegen hast du jetzt meinen Moderatoren-Link oder teilnehmenden Link und nicht Zuschauer-Link.
Oh,
Aber also für mich macht es nichts, aber genau, du bist dann mit auf der Aufnahme. Wir schneiden das nachher. Es geht eigentlich nur darum, dass wir unseren Teil einmal aufnehmen können.
soll ich, welchen Link? Ich glaube, ich hatte nur diesen Link.
Der ist in dem Programm.
Okay. Dann gucke ich da nochmal nach und tritt dann nochmal mit dem anderen Link bei.
Ja. Aber sonst für mich ist es auf jeden Fall auch okay. Dann kannst du nämlich auch mitsprechen. Ich glaube, Frau Schach, in dem Webinar-Format können die Leute nicht mit diskutieren nachher, oder?
Genau, ich glaube, man kann da nur in den Chat reinschreiben, soweit ich weiß.
Okay, das war mir nicht klar, dass das so.
Aber ich bin mir auch nicht so ganz sicher. Das ist auch nicht mein Zoom-Account, von dem her, ich weiß es nicht so genau.
Ich würde jetzt, oder wir warten jetzt noch ein bisschen und sonst machen wir ein bisschen eine Privatvorstellung für Sie und Micha Bröckling. Ist auch okay.
Ja, alles klar.
Und Sie arbeiten bei Frau Gumigu?
Ja, genau. Ich mache nochmal das Video an. Genau, ich bin Hilfskraft bei Frau Gumegu. Genau. Ja. Und Sie? Ich weiß gar nicht so
Politik.
genau.
Also ich glaube, wir sind wahrscheinlich ein paar hundert Meter nur auseinander.
Mhm.
Wir sitzen in der Melanchthonstraße.
Mhm. Mhm.
Genau. Und ich
Okay.
glaube, den Rest der erklärt sich dann in der Präsentation, warum
Ja,
wir zu zweit sitzen. Haben Sie ein Forschungsthema schon oder haben Sie schon ein Arbeitsthema?
nein, also ich bin im Bachelor. Ich bin einfach nur hier so wissenschaftlich, nee, wie heißt es, wissenschaftliche Hilfskraft, studentische Hilfskraft, genau. Ja,
Ja, ja, vielen Dank fürs Dabeisein. Ich weiß nicht, wir können jetzt noch ein paar Minuten warten und dann fangen wir einfach an, ja, würde ich sagen.
ja,
Und dann machen wir das hier im kleinen Rahmen und vielleicht kommt ja noch jemand dann verspätet dazu. Alles klar. Dankeschön.
ja.
Okay, we would start, and can we just do a brief sound check? Can you hear Jakob?
Can you hear me? That would be great.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
So welcome to this afternoon's session, Inspiring Hope about our planetary future. We are very happy to be here at the International Forum for Human Nature Proximities. And today we will present you with an online adaptation of our performance art and lecture with the forest that we did as a collaborative project this July. And we have 1 hour for this session, so our presentation will take about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we have time for questions. Before we begin, I want to invite you that you don't have to take notes, but just lean back and take in the presentation. This will be recorded and later shared. Also the references, the academic ones, but also the art ones can be sent to you later if you like. And also you can ask for them in the discussion afterwards. So I start now with opening the floor for the presentation of our collaborative collective and give the word over to Jakob.
So also welcome from my side. We are the Schönbuch Forest, the Los Cedros Forest, Riccarda Flemmer and Jakob Jautz. The Schönbuch Forest is positioned close to Stuttgart and Tübingen in Baden-Württemberg, Germany. It's a mixed woodland forest that is host to many different animals and plants and mushrooms and its local weather. And among the animals, there's also us, the humans. I'm Jakob Jautz. I'm a performance artist and dancer. I studied circus and performance art and then dance and choreography, and I work since 2018 in the field of theater. Around 2021, I started with my research on performing and working with forests or with nature.
Yeah. My name is Riccarda Flemmer. I'm here from the University of Tübingen, and I present you to the Los Cedros forest. It's a very famous forest in international law because it has become the first forest with rights on this planet. It's a forest, a cloud forest in Ecuador, and in 2021, after it gained legal personhood, so rights of nature, it has its own right to exist and to flourish in the context of the Ecuadorian constitution. It's also famous now in the art sphere because Cosmos Childrake, a musician from the UK, together with a collective of Colombian and US lawyers, is fighting for the recognition of creative co-authorship and copyrights for Los Cedros. I will share later the link with you to this song. It's a song of the Satyrs, and you can listen to it via Spotify and so on and so forth, and the other streaming platforms. And this is kind of in the court proceedings. It's a current legal case. So in this setting, my name, Riccarda Flemmer, just pops up in an academic sense, and I'm a political scientist with a focus on rights of nature and activist movements in Latin America, and more recently also in Europe for rights of nature. I'm also employed here by the University of Tübingen in the context of a larger research project with the title of Critical Proximities. And proximity is something that served Jakob and I for kind of understanding or reframing also our project. It's an idea that instead of binaries, we talk about beings that are proximate, that we coexist with. And this proximity can be felt even under conditions of geographical distance. So the Los Cedros forest is many thousand miles away or kilometers away from us here in Tübingen, in Ecuador, on the other side of the world, or in the middle or the center of the world, as Ecuadorians often say. Before we begin now with our presentation or with the performance part, and this is, as said, an online adaptation, a very condensed way of presenting this, not in a forest, but here in this room and in an online setting, I want to take you backstage so that Jakob first gives you a little bit of context about his collaborations with the Schönbuch forest and other forests.
Yeah, so for me, the topic of the relationship we have with nature is sort of the core element of my work with nature. And I choose, or in general, I choose arts as a means of communication, and performance art has the potential and the power to speak through a different kind of medium than our contextualized language. So it speaks from a different place, and it speaks probably to a different space. My work specifically with traces, it started a long time ago, but it really focused in a 5-month-long research and rehearsal period where I rehearsed in 4 different forests around Europe. I did a tree climbing education as part of my research. I met with foresters and biologists so they could teach me and share with me their practice with forests, and also give me a better understanding how I can coexist and co-work with forests in the least harmful possible way. When I arrived the first time to the forest as part of my rehearsals, I realized I really have to unlearn a lot of things and rethink a lot of things of what I thought is right, of what I've learned in my own education about performance art and theater, but also about my understanding of us within this big planetary system we are in. And so I really had to unlearn a lot of things. And the first 2 months was very heavily influenced or focused on sitting down and listening what is already there and what I have to say within this that is already there. Riccarda and me met last year, and we sort of understood that our motivation for the work that we are doing comes from a similar standing point. And this is basically to learn and gain a bigger understanding how we can be and co-live with other humans, but also with the more than human world, and be in the least harmful way and in a more caring way. And I would hand over to Riccarda.
Yeah, so Jakob has listened a lot and I have read a lot to come kind of this question. And one of the kind of findings, but also challenges or puzzles that we have in my field of research, not only I myself in my work, but also others, can be kind of condensed in this statement by Martello and Jesnov from the early 2000s. And this is kind of continuous, so that you find these kinds of research statements still in articles, in handbook works, and chapters, and also in international politics, as we will see a little bit later. So they find that the main theoretical and practical challenges conjured by climate change is that this climate change as a relational social process, environmental concern in this context must somehow mediate between the extremes of local and global. So very situated, but also planetary practices and issues, as well as individual bodies, so different types of knowledge, embodied forms of knowledge, and planetary survival. So the bigger picture of this universe or pluriverse we are together in. So this kind of is a call, and this is an ongoing endeavor to find new ways on how to think and feel and act in the context of climate crisis and towards planetary futures. We would now start kind of coming out of the backstage, going up into the performance, and this is the first station in our imaginary, in this sense, because it's online, forest walk.
I'm already in the forest. I'm waiting for the audience to arrive. And then I see the audience coming along the way, and I try to walk towards them. And while I'm walking towards them, there's a branch on the floor, and I trip over this branch, and I start falling down the hill of the forest, and I'm crashing down at the bottom, come up, look into the audience, and I smile at them and say, "Don't worry, it's just a performance." This is an introduction of Traces, a performative walk in and with the forest. And as you can see here in the picture, I'm wearing a lot of protective gear, waterproof ones. I have my helmet, I have a protector of my spine and my chest underneath my jacket. The idea is that I want to highlight that the natural world can be very dangerous, but it doesn't have to. And that if we get rid of our protective layers and if we get a little bit out of our comfort, we realize that there's a huge world that is maybe not as harmful and dangerous as we thought it might be. In this scene, I'm taking off the clothes. I explain a little bit what I'm wearing, why I'm wearing it. It's in an ironic way. At some point, suddenly my clothes that I took off and hooked on a small hook, they fly up to the tree, and a big branch comes down from the tree, almost hits me, and I'm down there unprotected without my gear because it's flying high up in the tree. And I realize, oh, now how I'm there, it's actually really beautiful here. And I run around and I realize and discover the forest, and I share a little bit, speaking out loud to myself what I'm discovering. And then suddenly I turn to the audience and I realize that they're also humans. And that brings me to the next part, where I'm introducing the audience to the forest and the forest to the audience.
Yeah, in this station, from control to proximity, as we labeled it, we have this part of Jakob that kind of in a very embodied way shows how this transition or how these differences between control and connection can work. When we look at this in the context of climate politics and international law, we find that we have different trajectories to modernization, control, or transformation towards sustainability. And the rhetoric we have here is also one, which is very related to war metaphors, but also rhetoric. So the COP16 in Colombia 3 weeks ago was about making peace with nature, and this COP is about the biodiversity convention. So making peace with nature is very prominent in international climate politics, in the summits that are happening now, but also in the bigger UN pictures. The United Nations Secretary General in the beginning of the 2000s said, making peace with nature is a defining task of the 21st century. So finding ways to connect and to coexist instead of war. When we look at this from the perspective of rights of nature, interpreted in an ecocentric way, and you see this on the right side, it's the idea that we decenter the human from being on the top of creation. So this egocentric picture on the left-hand side in the pyramid, to a more networked and more relational and more equal understanding of us as humans connected to other beings. So rights of nature also adds to rights of humans. We have human rights still in place when we talk about rights of nature. It's not that the human disappears, but the status is not unitary, so it's connected to other beings. For sustainability, we can think of this as a transformatory approach to the sustainability model. Usually we speak about sustainability in terms of 3 pillars. So we have nature, economy, and human society on the same footing, 3 pillars for sustainability. And when we look at this from Earth jurisprudence, so more ecocentric ideas, nature is kind of the bigger picture, and then human society and economy are integrated into this scenery. So the hierarchy of rights very much changes. So we need to see the planetary ecosystem as a reference point. So with this, from control to proximity into transformation, we walk deeper into the forest and come to the next station. And these stations are usually signposted by this kind of leaf patterns. And we arrive in the forest and
So this is the sensing tree climb, that's how I call it. Normally you would see it in the forest, and normally now you would hear it with the sound of the forest, but for technical reason it's not working. The sensing tree climb is my way of how I can bring the co-authorship into being, because it's very easy to say that I perform in and with the forest, but then what does that actually mean? And how can I give space and place and take me out of the center? In this part, this is a practice developed. I called it landscape-based choreography. So how can I base my choreography on the landscape that I'm in? In that case, I wanted that the tree really defines the movement. It takes away my decisions. I don't really have, like, my protection is I climbing up the tree and then down again, but how I do it, the tree is defining it. So I climb up and down the tree many times till I learn exactly each branch, where it is, how it feels like, how much weight it can carry, till I can climb it up and down blind. And the movement is very much defined by the branches that are there. And when I come to a new forest, I usually rehearse that for 10 days. And the tree does not only define the movement, but it also forms my body in a way. I get hard skin on new body parts that I didn't have a hard skin before, and I get most of the time some bruises. Because even so, I try to be as soft as possible. Sometimes it's a little bit rough on the skin. And we would walk further on to a part with a small installation, and we would come to the next station, which is my touch part. Standing still is not a crime, the slogan, which is for me my title of this part, is inspired by the Arabic Spring demonstrations, where those people were not allowed anymore to demonstrate. And in order to still stand their ground and give a message, they went out in the street, in the city, and they were just standing still for days to show their beliefs and to stand their ground. In this part, I'm referring a lot to also my personal experience with activism. I have visited and been part of forest occupations around Germany. And even so, I had a very positive feeling that we are doing something good and right, and we are protecting the forest. At the same time, I was very conflicted by the feeling that this kind of activism is full of war metaphors and strategies. So from that point, I started to search how can I make a form of activism that is maybe more sensitive, that is not so confrontative, that is not speaking from a war metaphoric, but from a different point. And I end the scene with the slogan, "Capitalism does not care about our creativity."
When we talk about care, we frame it or we use it as kind of, or we try to develop on this basis a new language instead of talking about war. When you remember back from the climate negotiations, so the summit, making peace with nature implies that we are currently at war with nature. And the vocabulary that we try to build or incorporate into our work is much more phrased by proximate coexistences, so just being in connection, close, or also on a distance, on a geographical distance sometimes, under relations of mutual care. This mutual care, as Jakob describes, is not just an intimate connection, kind of sensitive connection, but also standing ground together. And making case for nature or legal actions for nature is usually promoted by humans, by activists, by lawyers in court proceedings and legal arenas. And I want to show you the Eco-Jurisprudence Monitor very briefly. It's an open access database that you can access online. And it lists the different cases for eco-jurisprudence. So this more ecocentric instead of human-centric ways to do rights and legal framings. What we see in this database, there are over 500 cases for eco-jurisprudence, including rights of nature, and they go for different ecological actors. This is how it's called in this database. And they center around, in a majority of cases, all nature, so all nature, the whole planetary ecosystem, or the ecosystem inside legislation. So Ecuador's constitution recognizes rights of nature, and it just has the formal jurisdiction over Ecuadorian territory. So in this territory, all nature has rights. And then it comes to different parts of nature. So animals or forests like los cedros, freshwater, grasslands, marine ecosystems, mountains, plants, or space even. So not on Earth, but in the outside. And there's in this kind of framing the Declaration for the Rights of the Moon. What I also want to share with you are some particular cases that have a storyline that is far away from this war rhetorics and much more insisting on mutual care. And here Los Cedros is coming up again as the reason why it is so famous in international legal settings, but also in political activism. And when you see the campaigns in favor of Los Cedros done by activists with the forest on the hashtags and on the posts, you see that these very much resemble campaigns that we also have here in Germany, an activism against coal mining, for example, and in favor of forests like the Hambacher forest. So Bosques sin Minería forest without mines is not just a topic for Ecuador or for Latin America, but also for us here in Europe and in Germany. So you see the activism part and the struggling and mutual care part, and you also see that there are victories involved in this. So celebration, that is the celebratory poster from the campaign to protect the whole valley where Los Cedros is situated intact. And they gained the recognition for NTAC and the rights of nature in 2023. So this excluded mining and oil concessions from this area, and recognized the importance and the rights of the Intac Valley in terms of biodiversity, but also in terms of the right to exist and to flourish. And one of the main actors in the setting was the frog that you see here on the right, in the right corner, the Harlequin long-nosed frog. And he's, so to say, the hero in this setting. It's a frog that is only 2.8 centimeters big, so you can measure it, it's more or less a thumb or a little bit less than a thumb. And this, in the forest, we were finding stones, or our audience, participants were trying to find stones which are exactly 2.8 centimeters. And you can carry these stones and be reminded how small you can be to win a big case. So with the Harlequin long-nosed frog, we walk now deeper into the forest, and this sensation of depth and this kind of attention to the little things is what motivated the installations along this path that Jakob created. So the zooming exercise, the attention to the small things, you find along the walk when you go from station to station.
I'm high up in the trees, and the audience are still passing by the last installations in the forest. And when they arrive to the last scene, they don't really see where I am. There's a very high and tall beech tree. There's a rope hanging down. And in the top, in the canopy, there's little me. And I'm waiting till the audience are arriving. And when they all arrived, the first ones who had arrived are already a little bit bored because nothing has happened. And then they suddenly hear a voice from the very top of the tree. And in this part, I was thinking about a teacher of mine. He constantly reminded us, if you're stuck, flip your mind, like make a handstand. And I took this literally in this part. So I'm hanging upside down from the trees. I'm changing perspective. I'm showing that the inaccessible, the unimaginable is actually possible and reachable and close to us if we just dare to think about it and let it become truth. This is part of the hope part of the last station. And in order for sincere hope to exist, we also really need to give space for the grief. And that brings me to, which is also part of the last station, the small tears. The tears were what you can see here in the right side. They were hidden along the pathway from the beginning of the performance to the last part of the performance. And the audience were invited, you were invited, to take them along with you and to place them then in this box in the end. Those tears, they represent for me the strong feeling I had many times when I was rehearsing. It was those feelings that every day I discovered new plants and new insects that I've never seen or heard of before. And at the same time, when I came back in the evening and I was opening the news, I heard about mass extinction and we're losing many tears that we have maybe never discovered. And that's exactly how I felt. I was in my backyard in the forest that I grew up in, and I have been very often there. And still, now that I spend every day in the forest, I realize there's so much more that I have no clue about and I haven't met yet. And that brought me very often to tears. With this in mind, I would also invite you to do a little backyard adventure and go out to your back door and maybe find some species you haven't met before.
Yeah, this critical proximity, so this being proximate coexisting is not only a matter of grief, so losing things, but also of hope. And we see this also when we come to the first European Rights of Nature case, the Mar Menor. It's a saltwater lagoon in Spain, and it was recognized in its legal personhood in 2022. And the campaign to protect the Mar Menor has been ongoing over a decade, much more over a decade, and to free it from pesticides and from contamination. But it was very hard for this collective of activists and academics to find the signatures to get the Mar Menor stronger rights. So only when in 2018 the fish were floating dead on the shores of the Mar Menor, people stood up and decided to support this campaign and sign to petition for stronger rights. What you also see on the right side, and this is one of the stronger images, but it needs contextualization, you have over 70,000 people who formed a human chain around the Mar Menor in 2021, which was a final push to get this into the parliament in Spain and get the parliamentarians to sign the petition for the Mar Menor's legal personhood. And this case, so this ecosystem is also prominent and becoming part of international jurisprudence, European jurisprudence, and one of the faces, the human faces with the Mar Menor together is Teresa Vicente. She's a law professor from the Murcia University in Spain. She was here in Tübingen 1 month ago and spoke about this case. And she received, and this is the picture you see, the Goldman Environmental Prize this year. This is kind of celebrated as a Green Nobel Prize each year. So there's grief, things we lose, but also the hope involved in these cases.
After I come down from the top of the tree, I strip off my last layers of protection and I step into the landscape of hope.
So with this, we end our performance and would very much look forward to feedback and comments. It's the first time, as was already said, to present this online. And we would be very curious about your opinions, impressions. Thank you.